Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of the City Council, the annual budget meeting. I'm delighted to see people in the public gallery watching democracy in action, but I would ask all members of the public present, in order to avoid unnecessary distraction to councillors and others watching the proceedings, that you keep to your chosen seat until a natural break in the agenda. During the meeting today, I will be making rulings on process and conduct and would ask Council to abide by standing orders and rules of debate. At certain times, I may seek guidance from my advisors. Should we need to adjourn, I will inform Council of what is happening and a time for us to reconvene. If members' speeches run over the time allocated, I will allow you to finish your sentences, but ask you to finish as quickly as possible. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind members that there is no local government equivalent of parliamentary privilege. Members will therefore be liable for any defamatory statements they make, and may also remind councillors of the requirements of member officer protocol. If you wish to speak during the meeting, I would ask you to raise your hand and wait for me to invite you to speak. Please raise your points of order verbally. I will then pause the meeting and deal with the point of order. When raising a point of order, please state which procedure, rule or law you believe has been breached. All votes will be conducted via the electronic voting system today. If we receive any amendments to the recommendations before Council today, I will adjourn to ensure that all members have adequate time to read the amendment. Any amendments to the recommendation before Council today, I will ensure that all members have adequate time to read those amendments. Item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We have apologies from Councillors Morton, Rebecca Smith, Bridgman, Loveridge, Sally Nicholson and Poyser.
Thank you, councillors. Do we have any further? Councillor Lugger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Late minute apology from Councillor Darcy.
Thank you. Any further apologies?
Could it please be noted that Councillor Cudhay is going to be late?
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. I propose that we agree the minutes from 26th of January 2026 as a correct record. Deputy Lord Mayor, will you second my proposal?
I'll second my proposal, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Thank you. We'll move to the vote now. Please use the buttons on your unit: green in favour, red for against, and ambers to abstain. That has passed. Thank you. Item number 3, declarations of interest. I would like to remind the councillors that a general dispensation is in place regarding council tax interest for item 5. Therefore, councillors are not required to make individual declarations of interest solely on the grounds that they are council tax payers. Can members please make it known by raising their hands if they have any other private or disclosable pecuniary interest in any of the matters on today's agenda? My advisers will take a record of the interest declared. Thank you, members. Item 4 on the agenda, urgent announcements. I have no urgent announcements.
My Lord Mayor,
Councillor Hendy.
I'd like to move a procedural motion to suspend paragraph 5.1 appendix 1 of the rules of debate in relation to item 5, proposed revenue and capital budget and council tax levels 2026 to 27, to remove the time limit on the length of speech for the leader as well as for the opposition group leaders due to there being no largest opposition group on this one occasion.
Thank you, Councillor Hendy. Do you have a seconder? Shall we go to the vote using the keypads, please? That's carried. Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda, the proposed revenue and capital budget and council tax levels for 2026-27. Before we begin the debate, I would like to inform members that should amendments be moved, I will ask Council for an adjournment that will be required to understand the implications. All members will have the opportunity to speak on the motion and any amendments to it, but I would like to remind members that speeches must refer to the content of the motion on the floor at the time. Leader, would you introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, there's no denying that many people are worried right now about what we see in the news, about individuals who seek to divide communities, about the cost of living, access to affordable housing, finding a dentist or GP appointment, caring for older relatives, or helping family members secure well-paid work. These concerns have been central to our thinking as we work through the extremely difficult task of setting a balanced budget. Once again, the scale of demand and soaring costs in social care and homelessness have far exceeded the funding available. These services are not optional, they are critical, and we have both a moral and legal duty to deliver them. But we also have responsibilities to all Plymouth residents, to protect the 300 plus services that we deliver day to day, to provide value for money for everything we do, to give people across our city the best opportunities to thrive, and to set a budget that is realistic and deliverable. These responsibilities sit at the heart of the budget before us today, because a budget isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's a statement about doing right by the people we serve. We've all seen councils elsewhere arguing that the only answer to rising costs is to slash services and to hunt for so-called council waste. Some even promote a reckless approach to cutting spending with no thought to the consequences. This not only ignores the reality that 14 years of austerity stripped any perceived waste, it also shows disrespect for residents. It suggests they don't deserve decent services or investment in their communities. Well, this Labour administration believes in public services. We believe Plymouth residents deserve a council that protects, serves, and supports a growing city, one that attracts investment, creates jobs, builds better housing, and cares for our environment. And we are fortunate to have a government that believes the same, one that values public services and has begun addressing the damage done by years of underfunding. This year, councils received their first 3-year funding settlement in a decade, giving us vital stability. The settlements also increased our spending power and finally began to tackle the debt caused by historic underfunding of SEND services. And on that note, amazing progress has been made in 3 incredibly important areas. Children's social care in this city. They've turned that department around. Jemima and the wonderful staff that we have, I thank them. Not only are we no longer in engagement, but we are set fair for more dramatic improvements in the next year or 2. Our adult social care services have been rated as good by the Care Quality Commission, and a few weeks ago, Ofsted had high praise for the way in which staff and partners have transformed SEND performance. So Mary, thank you, and to your staff that work with you, and also to Sally Cresswell and the wonderful SEND team who worked so hard. And if that were not enough, we've won 16 awards given by trade and other sector bodies, with 5 more in the pipeline for which we've been shortlisted. Remarkable. And alongside this progress, last week we saw a series of encouraging national economic updates that showed the wider picture is beginning to stabilise. We learned that retail sales rose by 1.8% in January, the strongest increase in more than a year and a half, giving a real sign that confidence is returning to the high street. UK manufacturers also reported the biggest surge in export orders since 2021, demonstrating renewed strength in our export economy. And that's really important in Plymouth, because Plymouth is a city with the highest proportion of goods and services exported in the country. And in a major boost to the country's public finances, the government recorded a £30.4 billion surplus in January, the highest monthly surplus since records began all the way back in 1993. Some of us are old enough to remember 1993. This was driven by stronger tax receipts and lower debt interest payments. In addition, the UK's private sector strengthened with composite PMI, as the Purchase Managers Index, rising to 53.9, signalling growth across services and manufacturing. And perhaps most importantly for households, Lord Mayor, inflation fell to 3%, its lowest level in nearly a year, and bringing us closer to the moment when interest rates may begin to ease significantly. These developments don't just speak to a recovering national economy, they give local authorities like ours greater stability and create the conditions for growth, for investment, and for opportunity. This stability means that we can protect essential services from children's social care to bin collections without the chaos of emergency cuts seen elsewhere. It's also a government investing directly in communities. Up to 20 million will be spent through Ployd in Place in St Budo and 20 million in Devonport, including Morristown and Mount Wise. Residents will see real improvements, better high streets, safer public spaces, genuinely affordable homes and stronger community facilities. So despite the huge pressures we face, we are not going to be cutting services to the degree of others. This budget invests an additional 25 million in critical social care and homeless services while maintaining the day-to-day services that people rely on. Road repairs, grass cutting, libraries, events. It doubles the funding for play spaces enjoyed by hundreds of children every day. And it continues our substantial capital programme, investing 113.9 million in Plymouth next year alone. This programme builds on our strong track record of securing investment for the city. It includes major transport improvements like Woolwell to the George, delivering expanded capacity and reduced congestion. The new Meadow View facility for adults with complex needs and disabilities. The Armada Way regeneration, fully open in the early summer. A new all-round facilities at Tinside Lido, refurbished youth centres to give young people facilities to be proud of, and the soon-to-be completed Royal Parade improvements, and a transformed civic centre offering new homes and a City College skills hub. Our capital programme, Lord Mayor, and you would not believe this if you read the social media, currently has some 50 projects in progress, the vast majority on time and on budget. These improvements improve lives, but they also strengthen our long-term financial position. Investment creates jobs, builds skills, raises wages, supports better housing, and improves health. These in turn reduce long-term demand for crisis services. Many projects also generate income through rents and business rates, income we desperately need to maintain and sustain services. This is an ambitious budget because it needs to be. Plymouth is at the tipping point. Now, in the last 12 months, national announcements have created the platform for the strongest period of economic growth in our city for 50 years. A £4.5 billion defence investment with a 50-year pipeline. Plymouth named the UK Centre for Marine Autonomy, driving record investor interest. Helsing choosing Plymouth for its UK manufacturing headquarters. Babcock expanding beyond the dockyard with a new city centre HQ and logistics hub, and a £1 billion city centre investment pipeline through our partnership with Homes England and our shortlisting as a potential new town. Team Plymouth, formed last year, will help ensure every resident benefits through jobs, through skills, through higher wages, and through better housing. This is about people, families able to build their futures here. And it's about young people too. Our investment in youth centres and skills means the opportunities created by these huge economic shifts can be seized locally by local young people. We cannot afford to hesitate. Being ambitious is the only way Plymouth will fully benefit from what lies ahead. Some, however, would have us step back. They claim our borrowing is too high, but borrowing for investment is no different than a household mortgage. You borrow more than your annual income to buy a home, fixing your interest at the most affordable rate. We borrow when it improves people's lives. We borrow when it reduces long-term service demand. We borrow when it brings jobs, homes, skills, environmental benefits, or long-term savings. These figures are big because we are a big city, and big cities are those that think big. And what the critics don't mention is that our borrowing allows us to unlock millions in grant funding and supports projects that generate income. Do those people really want to see business parks not built and jobs lost to other cities? Do they think Plymouth residents don't deserve better transport, better green spaces, or world-class leisure and cultural facilities? Should our waterfront and historic assets be left to decay? If they had been in charge, we wouldn't have the Park Crematorium, the Life Centre, or the Box, which has attracted over 1 million visitors and delivered a £244 million economic impact. We make no apology for being ambitious for Plymouth. And that ambition is shared across the city, shown clearly in the support for our expression of interest in becoming UK City of Culture, which is already shining a spotlight on Plymouth's artistic and cultural talent in a sector which is growing at 5% a year. 2 years ago, we set ourselves some ambitious goals as part of our economic strategy. And I'm really pleased to share that the progress that we're seeing is not only positive in several areas, but we are also significantly ahead of schedule. On revitalising the city centre, when we launched that strategy 2 years ago, there were nearly 100 empty shops in the city centre, and we set a target to halve that number in 10 years. Council, that figure has already dropped to 63. At this pace, we're well on track to exceed our target much earlier than planned. On tackling poverty and improving life chances, one of our boldest commitments was to lift 3,000 people out of poverty over 10 years. And on the last index of multiple deprivation in 2025, that data shows remarkable progress. Since 2019, 14,000 fewer people in Plymouth are living in areas ranked amongst the most deprived local super output areas. Nationally, Plymouth recorded the second best improvement across all local authority areas, a significant shift that demonstrates the impact of targeted investment and partnership working. Then on national recognition for defence innovation, Plymouth continues to be recognised for its strengths in defence and manufacturing. We are the only city in the country to be named as a defence growth deal area, and only one of 5 areas nationally selected. The other 3 are countries, and one area that thinks it's a country. We are the only city. So that puts Plymouth in a unique and influential position within the UK's defence innovation landscape. We are a truly ambitious city, and we are going to continue to be ambitious. We're also, as I mentioned, on the list to become a new town, opening up new opportunities for growth, investment, and long-term development. And this city has also submitted a bid for a Defence Technical College of Excellence, strengthening our role in the future skills pipeline for the UK's defence sector. After years of effort, we are finally bringing the iconic Civic Centre back into use, transforming a symbol of our past into a centrepiece for our future. This is a budget that protects and maintains essential day-to-day services. But is it also a budget of ambition and opportunity? It is a budget that will help Plymouth realise its full potential. And finally, I would like to send a message to all those on social media talking this city down. I understand why you want to talk the Labour administration down, but Labour is proud of our country, proud of our city, and proud of our place. And to those naysayers, you need to recognise that right now in 2026, we are making history. Yes, Plymouth has a glorious past, but our best years are in front of us, and we now have an opportunity to enter a golden period for Plymouth. Lord Mayor, I move.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Lowry, I understand you are seconding the report. Do you wish to speak now, or do you wish to reserve your right?
I reserve my right to speak. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Right. Then we pass to the other group leaders. Councillor Lugger.
I'm obliged, my Lord Mayor. Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon, members. The budgetary papers we have before Council today are the product of hundreds of hours of hard work. That is apparent. Let me here render tribute where, above all, in my opinion, tribute is due. It is the great knowledge and experience of Councillor Lowry, the tact and skill of the Section 151 officer and his team steering and piloting the budget to Council today, together with the combined effort of those members of this Council who have put the budget today through the purification furnace of scrutiny. Through you, my Lord Mayor, we are indebted to you all. Looking at the papers, there is a noted change from last year. Yes, as Councillor Evans has alluded to, we have the multi-year settlement. Yes, members, it will give us more figures to grapple with, but most importantly, as paragraph 1.6 of the report highlights, it will give us the greater certainty over the medium-term financial period. However, in truth, this change is mostly as a result of the mere consequential lobbying of councillors. So again, my heartfelt thanks to you for that. We often hear about the crisis in local government finance. I cannot feel entirely dispensed from my duty to focus on the external issues which have a direct impact on the budget before us today. The crisis in local government, of course, in finance in England is a multifaceted issue that has been exacerbated by a combination of factors, including, of course, the rising demand for services, increased operational costs, and the statutory duty to balance a budget. The 2025 report by the Local Democracy Research Centre, the LDRC, reveals that a high proportion of local authorities across this country believe they will be issuing a Section 114 notice in the short and medium term. This is due to the fiscal environment challenges that we face. The situation is further complicated by the need for councils to raise council tax and make cuts to local services in order to bridge the funding gap. We, members, are fortunate, as a 114 notice is just a ghostly shadow of a catastrophe that we have averted because of the issue of the capitalisation statement. Something, of course, which has been a long time in the making, and indeed I've alluded to twice before at this budgetary meeting. And again, by way of obiter, the revenue support grant could have been much greater. Interestingly, it was said at Unison's annual council that the estimated funding gap across the country amounts to 4.1 billion in 2026-2027. This, members, of course, is the difference between what councils need to operate services and what they actually receive from the Labour government. This is borne out by paragraph 1.2 of the report before you today. The crisis in local government finance will continue. There will be pressure points vis-à-vis the sheer scale of adult social care expenditure, children's social care, homelessness functions, and SEND. Last year, I made reference to the national economy and the influence that has on local government financial activity. Various increases in business taxes taking its toll on the UK economy as companies cut back on hiring staff, and it will remain to be seen how the new Labour Party's legislation for employment is going to hamper this process. This administration before us today is therefore placed in quite an invidious position. It should be noted that they have delivered a workable budget under adverse circumstances, as succinctly put in paragraph 1.1 of the report, and I quote, "a highly challenged financial environment." So, all credit where credit is due. The administration opposite have worked hard with the tools at their disposal. Paragraph 1.3 of the report states that despite drained resources, the budget we see before us today will not have any reduction on critical services citywide. That, of course, remains to be seen. But members will see for themselves the headline figures and the rising demand pressure provided for adult social care, the home to school transport, costs for children's services, and of course SEND until the reforms come in hopefully next year. Some positive news here. Councillor Evans is right. The capital budget is looking healthy, which should deliver good financial returns for the city. As I mentioned last year, this is very much due to the vision of David Draffin and his team. But 2025 has brought more to the cake. Better finance for the Mill Bay Shore Power Project, more money for Freeport, and support for the National Marine Park, which I'm proud to be Vice Chair of. And of course, the Civic Centre, that monstrosity next door, hopefully should be sorted out someday soon. In sum, there's 225 million or thereabouts in external grants. I know members turn to page 6 of the report. Last year, I expressed some concerns about the level of reserves. The auditors said that £8 million was insufficient to maintain financial sustainability. Last year, it was increased to 12 million. And whilst the levels are said now to be acceptable, providing the spending and the savings ratios continue, I would ask that the report is carefully taken into consideration, and I quote, reaffirm our commitment to revising the reserve strategy. That is the challenge I put forward to the administration opposite. Finally, I should comment on budgetary threats. Last year, I highlighted the city's borrowing spiralling out of control. A question was raised at last month's full council regarding the level of debt this authority carries. And I did take some assurance from the answer provided by Councillor Lowry. I would mention, members, a local authority is not dissimilar to a business, to a company in the private sector. Very few companies can afford to expand their business operation by internal growth alone. Borrowing, of course, is an essential element in order to increase the infrastructure to expand the business for the greater good. Provided, as always, is that that borrowing is within the gearing ratio. As Mrs. Thatcher always said, you cannot spend more money than you earn. Yes, we have the exciting capital projects, and we were assured last month by Councillor Lowry that the authority's borrowing is within the prudential indicators. And all I would say is, can we keep a watchful eye on this? To my mind, it looks close to the ceiling. The cost of the loans get greater, of course, as the borrowing requirement gets greater going forward. My Lord Mayor, I'm grateful for Council's time today. I have no further observations to make on the papers before us, but I know that certain members of the group would like to ask a couple of specific questions. I thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good afternoon, members. Pleased to respond to Councillor Evans and the Labour Party's budget. I think probably the only thing we would agree on, all of us, that there is considerable worry in the local community about costs rising and the cost of living, and Labour members under the previous Conservative government were keen to ensure top of their agenda were the cost of living crisis that many in our local community are suffering. And I think it's worth just pulling out, Lord Mayor, that in the papers we're again reminded that 22,000 local residents benefit from in the order of £21 million of council support through the council tax support scheme, of which 70% of those 22,000 work. They're not people that don't contribute to society. They actually actively work but need support because of the cost of council tax. What we have not had really in the debate so far is that council tax is going up yet again under a Labour council that espoused a Labour government previously that would reform local government finance. But we've seen really a new Labour government, not quite so new now, really affecting very little change in the amount of money central government gives to local government. And I do welcome very much that, looking at more than an annual funding basis of supplying finance to local government, but looking at a 3-year, which in many ways, Lord Mayor, is an improvement, but it doesn't change the fact that local government is being asked again under a Labour government to provide more local finance. So the council taxpayer, the local citizens of this city, are being asked, if it's approved today, and no doubt Labour members will support their own budget, but they'll be asked to dig deeper. So they'll be asking for 4.99% increase in council tax. They'll be asked for increase in fees and charges. So car parking charges are expected to raise £1.4 million. So we have a city centre that in many ways has suffered significantly since COVID. Again, the few shoppers that come into the city centre will be asked to pick up more. And indeed, we can't rule out district centre car parks suffering from increases or the introduction of charges, because this budget is asking to the car parking division to pick up £1.481 million of additional revenue. That can only be done by increasing charges or introducing charges. We also see reference to the fact that other fees and charges, the previous administrations had a policy of effecting an increase in charges in line with inflation. It's referenced now that fees and charges should be full cost recovery. So what it means in essence to most people in this city is that it's more payment for pretty much most things they do and less service. So that's the key message today, that actually under Labour there's very little change from the Conservative approach to local government, and actually the situation is getting worse. So if you struggle to pay your council tax, you're going to struggle to use some of the local services where fees and charges are applied, because those fees and charges are going up too. That, Lord Mayor, wasn't what the Labour Party advocated when they weren't in charge nationally. And what's disappointing is that across this chamber, there's numerous Labour Party councillors who really never seem to stand up for their communities, never raise concerns that they're raising concerns with the government about the way that their communities are funded. And that's really disappointing. And I was chastised recently at a scrutiny panel for having passion, standing up for concerns of my residents in a scrutiny environment because I got a bit passionate. All I say through you, Lord Mayor, it's a pity Labour members aren't more passionate about their wards. Their wards deserve passionate councillors standing up for what's right than actually just following the party line. Because Councillor Evans has always been, whenever his party's not in government, very passionate about the fact that local authorities in Plymouth hasn't had fair funding. And it's disappointing we now have a Labour government with a Labour council, and actually we're going to be worse off. We're going to be worse off.
It's a point of order.
False statements. I'd call them lies. Can we get the lies corrected by you, please, Lord Mayor?
That's not a point of order, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So when we then take the capital programme, if we refer back to the consultation exercise that the council has taken with the budget, there were two key themes. One was that residents who responded wanted access to health care and dentistry, fair enough, and also that they wanted fewer potholes, therefore improved highway maintenance, cleaner and greener streets and transport. So we have a capital programme over the 5 years of 319 million, and the leaders referred to the papers of 113 million this year. But we haven't seen really highway maintenance have any substantial increase. In fact, last year we'll have spent in the current financial year more in highway maintenance from a capital perspective than what we're proposing in the next financial year. So we're not seeing the Labour Party deliver on highway maintenance, for instance. Now, I can only take the information provided in Annex A, page 44, which shows that highway, carriageway and footway repairs in 2025-26, we spent 6.4 million. And it's substantially less moving forward. And we all know from a very parochial manner that we know that pavements and carriageways are bedevilled with potholes and unsatisfactory surfaces. And that, I don't know when parties are going to address this. Whilst there has been some short-term additional finance, we actually need...
Lord Mayor, would Councillor Nicholson take an intervention, please?
Would you take an intervention?
Lord Mayor, there's an opportunity for the Labour Party to respond to the points that have been raised during the course of the debate. So I didn't intervene on the Leader of the Council, and I've never seen an intervention of the Leader of the Council when they're presenting the budget. I'm not having a debate on mine just whilst I'm making the points. There'll be plenty of opportunity to debate this after the speech. But I wouldn't get passionate.
Everybody will get an opportunity to speak later.
It's very interesting.
If you can let...
Right.
Would you please carry on, Councillor
Speaking to the Lord
Nicholson.
Mayor, Leader. So when it comes to the capital programme, again, the priorities of the public through the consultation are not being addressed. And we all know as ward councillors that more money needs to go into highway maintenance. And what we're seeing in effect is a reduction in this coming financial year. That isn't good enough, and what it results in, Lord Mayor, is a greater claims against the council for people that trip over the pavement, or there's defects to vehicles because they're substantially damaged because of the road surfaces. So, you know, certainly my view, and certainly the view of independent members, is more needs to be addressed in relation to highway maintenance. I fully support, and my colleagues would fully support, ambition for the city. But that needs to be affordable. And there is a growing concern, despite what the leader has said, of that the borrowing of this local authority is getting to a stage where people are grossly concerned that we're not going to be able to maintain the costs of supporting that borrowing. And the greater borrowing that takes place will result, as we all know, in greater costs to fund that borrowing. And there has to be a point when we think we've got to a stage where we can't borrow anymore. And it would be interesting to know, through you, Lord Mayor, at what point Councillor Larry and the Leader of the Council believe that would be reached. And effectively, I know we have the medium-term financial strategy, but that obviously evolves over time. So there is concern about the impact of borrowing and financing that in the future. So in summary, Lord Mayor, if you believe that people should suffer a 5% increase in council tax, that they should suffer an increase in car parking charges, fees and charges, but actually probably get less in the way of service from the local authority in 26-27 financial year, then you should vote for the budget. I don't think it's a budget for the people of Plymouth, and I would urge members to vote against the budget because we in Plymouth could do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Councillor McLean? No? Councillor Tippett and Councillor... I appreciate they're not leaders, but I was going to give them the opportunity because they're on their own. I'll now open up the debate to the floor. I would remind everybody that you have 5 minutes maximum to speak. Does anybody wish to speak? Right, okay. Right. Councillor Dan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. There's been a lot of talk about the council's debt, and I think it needs a little bit of explaining, because it can look as though we should be worried. But like anybody who has a mortgage at home, we know that you buy a property, you get a mortgage, you invest in that property, and in the end, you end up with a property that becomes your own, which is effectively what the council has been doing. In recent years, we have invested where we have been able to get the council a really long-term financial capital programme, which brings in rental income. It generates business rates. We get council tax. Because we have the property, it means that we can pull in significant grant funding from other places. And also, it enables private sector investment into the city, which supports the ambition and the growth that the leader was talking about. And also recognises, Councillor Lugger, that the capital investment, although we do have debt, it's a measured debt, it's a managed debt, which we can use the finances from it to pay for some of the shortfall in the revenue services like children's social care and adult social care and homelessness. To put this into context, over the last 12 months, the council has benefited from over £21 million income from our property portfolio. The economic development team alone has secured grant income of £225 million, and the private sector has brought in £395 million worth of investment. If the council didn't facilitate this sort of collaborative work across the city, it would not happen. And we have a multi-million pipeline for the future, which is going to bring in over 25,000 jobs. So it's this combination of council investment, grant funding, private sector money, bringing in new jobs and better jobs that will ultimately allow the council to reduce the pressure on its demand-led services. So Councillor Nicholson, you talked about the 70% of the 22,000 households who get support in the city being in work. If we can get these people better jobs so that they are better paid, that is one way of reducing the demand on the council. So this ambition isn't just about buildings and money, it's actually about really making the impact on the residents who work in this city. One of the most successful initiatives we've had has been our Property Investment Fund. And this has been going cross-party over a number of years and has bought over 175,000 foot of high-quality industrial commercial workspace, generating £3.5 million per year profit after all costs, after all borrowing. So this has meant that over the last few years, it's brought in £24 million worth of money that we have been able to use for council services. And I would like to come back to what the leader was talking about at the very beginning in terms of ambition. If we don't have ambition for the city and bring in these jobs, if we don't have ambition and improve our public services, if we don't have ambition and improve the city centre and the people that come here, if we don't have ambition for economic growth, if we didn't get all these 16 awards, if we didn't have the ambition to be City of Culture, what would our residents look forward to? What would they look forward to? Yes, we do have a problem with potholes and rain and bad weather like every other local authority across the city. But there aren't many cities who can boast that we have got improved education, improved adult social care, improved children's social care, improved SEND, improved economic development, improved ambition for the city. There are very, very few cities who can stand up and say, this is our legacy for the future. So this is an ambitious budget, and we should all be very, very proud of what we've managed to achieve.
Councillor John Stevens.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Page 132.
Okay. Right, okay, let's go. 10-minute start. Okay, so during the budget exercise with the public in November and December, residents said that they told us that fewer potholes, cleaner, greener streets and transport was their second highest priority. So I welcome this budget proposal for 26 to 27, which forms part of a 4-year programme for highways. To address this, a multi-million highways maintenance budget covering the next 4 years has been received and illustrated. So that reflects the Labour government's funding commitment to move away from short-term reactive delivery to a cost-effective asset management report. So it's important to have the ability to deliver all our works on our highways and over our highways in a strategic manner, as well as finishing off the current year's budget of our highways. So for 4 years, there will be a £55.7 million investment. And on page 32, members will see that that is 74 million over 5 years, as that's work in the pipeline. That work will include work on carriageways, drainage, footways, street lighting, traffic signals, structures and safety schemes. We have fixed 15,000 potholes over the past 5 years. We will fill more and better because the highways team now have a 4-year programme of money, a delivery to enable us to address the backlog of necessary intervention works. But essentially, like our work across other responsibilities of the council, our plan will ensure a prevention better than cure approach to other efficiencies in planning and delivery, and widen the window of opportunity for further adoption of innovative and, more importantly, improve highways resilience as extreme weather events are becoming the norm. And to put the latter into context, in the last 6 weeks of this year compared to the same period last year, there has been a 300% increase in reported defects on the roads and a 270% increase in repairs ordered and raised. For carriageway surface repairs, there's been a 340% increase in both the reported defects and the repairs. That's putting our budget under pressure, it's putting the highways team under pressure, but the weather is something beyond our control unless some people on the opposition benches have magic powers to control that. Let's look at how the budget proposals address our commitment to cleaner, greener streets and sustainable transport. We will further provide for residents and workers EV charging points across the city. We will promote sustainable public transport through our enhanced bus improvement plan and the partnerships that are key to it. We will complete Royal Parade in 1 week time, 1 week later than hoped for, but 5 weeks less than the original completion date. And let's give credit to all those workers who've worked throughout the last few months in the most horrible weather some of you would not want to carry out your work in. We also commit to provide good quality infrastructure to promote active travel, such as walking, wheeling and cycling, a zebra crossing in Budshead Road in Whitley, safer streets for students and residents to travel around Plymouth School, and a new Safer Schools Street project in Chadderwood. We also have a commitment to railway connectivity with other public transport to reduce avoidable car journeys, as noticed in the recommendation number 9 from the Scrutiny Management Board, which includes reopening a train station in Plimpton. And in the capital programme, for those necessary and unavoidable journeys by car and other vehicles, there is continued investment to complete the Woolwell to the George scheme over 40 years after it was first requested, the Manadon A38 interchange, the A374 highway and flood defence schemes, and restoring northbound access to Charlton Road, which is the request of residents and has been asked for over 5 years, and we are delivering on that. And it's worth me reminding people that only 44% of funding for these capital schemes is financed by internal resources. 56% is sourced from grants secured from the government and contributions from our community infrastructure level and 106 allocations. So this adds up to 120 million for transport provided by grants over the 2 years. A Labour council would attract, I'm sure, many more millions going forward. That's why those columns are blank in your charts, because actually working up grants and so on will take time, and those figures will drop into those empty sections. And another of the priorities selected by residents was to keep children, adults and communities safe. We are committing new money in our highways budget to provide safer school streets. We are investing in additional parking enforcement around school, prioritising those with greatest problem, complementing the terrific work happening in schools and by the road safety team. We will work on those schools. We will put a spotlight on those schools which are conducting good practice and safe practice, but we will also spotlight the impact of inconsiderable parking and driving around the school neighbourhoods. Parking charges, the opposition put parking charges up by 33% over 2 years. We will not do that, same sentence, but we will make sure that we protect and promote district shopping centres. Thank you very much. I recommend this budget to members.
Thank you. Councillor Lawson. Councillor Lawson? No? Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to say that in this budget, we have allocated £20,000 to support violence against women and girls. The Community Fund, which supports grassroots organisations. A big thank you to the Royal British Legion and Cedar Collings for match funding. So now I'm pleased to announce that that fund has £74,000. I want to thank all partners involved for their continued commitment to ensuring that Plymouth communities are empowered to play a central role in addressing and ending violence against women and girls. I'd like to move on to onto libraries, which falls under me. We are committed to maintaining our library provision for 26 and 27, as we recognise how important libraries are a key to our communities, and that we are working with a number of partners to extend local services within our libraries. For example, the banking hub in Plymouth. Keeping all libraries opened supports this approach and enables a full development and delivery on a new and exciting future for libraries. And just one for you, Councillor Nicholson. In January, this Labour government announced £27.5 million through their Libraries Improvement Fund to help public libraries upgrade their buildings and technology. Plymouth Libraries will bid for this funding to support new technology, including Wi-Fi printing, which will significantly benefit users when bidding opportunity is available in the spring. So this Labour government is supporting our local communities. Just moving on to our bereavement registration and coroner service. I understand that many families continue to face financial pressures and that a bereavement can place additional strain at an already difficult time. Every family wants to ensure their loved one receives the funeral that they deserve, and we're mindful of how important that is. For this reason, our cremation fees at the park will not be increasing, helping to give families the space to choose a service that feels right for them and remains affordable. So I certainly would say, Lord Mayor, in this budget you will see that fees, not all fees are going up, my fees aren't going up. We are carrying on supporting our local communities, and I can certainly say from a St Buda councillor for the last 20 years, I have advocated for my communities for the best service. Thank you very much.
Councillor Creswell.
Lord Mayor, I support the budget position for education, participation and skills, but my focus is special educational needs. The SEND system needs fundamental reform, and today Bridget Phillipson is presenting the much-awaited white paper, legislation to ensure that children get the right support they need in the right place, even earlier, and parents do not feel they have to battle. This reform will take more than one parliament, but it's best to take the time and provide the resources. Today, £4 billion is announced for inclusion in mainstream schools and £1.8 billion for specialist staff, the so-called experts at hand service. This is a real plan with children and families at the centre, not just hand-wringing on the sidelines. We all know that growing SEND needs are putting greater demand on our budget. The cost of home-to-school transport's risen by 49% in 5 years, from 724 children to now 1,076 children requiring transport every school day, at an average cost of £7,541 per child. This is pressure on the revenue budget, but in addition, there's been major pressure on the high needs block of the Dedicated Schools Grant, the DSG. Educational healthcare plans have increased from 2,703 in September 2023 to 3,422 in July 2025. This is driving demand for special school places, had led to capacity pressures and greater reliance on higher cost independent special school placements. Independent special school placements have risen to 487 compared to 149 3 years ago. Nationally, the average cost of an independent special school place is £63,000, more than twice the £26,000 cost of state special school place. And over 30% of these schools are backed by private equity firms with public money intended for children with the most complex needs flowing into the private profit. It was excellent to see that the government's announcement last week is there'll be clear national price bands and strengthened standards to ensure that every specialist placement delivers real progress for children and young people and not just higher bills for councils. Another positive financial announcement from the government is that the local authorities will be eligible to receive the grant covering 90% of their high needs related DSG deficit accrued in 25-26 and further support in the following 2 years. Our DSG deficit at the end of 25-26 is estimated at 52 million, and therefore our grant should be 47 million. The funding comes with requirements, but we are well placed. Funding will only play to local authorities who submit and secure the DfE's approval of local SEND reform plans that will be developed collaboratively by local area partnerships, including schools, health, early years settings, post-16, to ensure plan reflects the shared responsibility of the whole local system to support our children. The government has stated the general direction of SEND reform is towards establishing a more inclusive mainstream environment. And we will be moving towards the SEND capital plan to ensure that all children in Plymouth can have access to an education in the community where they live. We've already been delivering a programme of intensive targeted support with our schools. This has enabled us to make provision for 380 children in 38 mainstream schools. This early support, identification and meeting of needs is giving confidence to parents, preventing exclusions and improving attendance. Local authorities are expected to set out clear pathways towards an inclusive system in line with the wider vision of SEND reform. I'm confident that the work we have been doing as a local authority with all our partners, cross-party, is reflected in the very positive monitoring inspection visit and report which was published this month and indicates that we are in step with the inclusive approach to SEND, and we are seeing already in the white paper. But real financial commitment by this government is what really is important. And announcements today, calculated, I believe, with all the other previous announcements, comes to something like 10.7974 billion additional spending on SEND. And that's excluding the 90% grant to cover the DSG. Today, I am so optimistic that we can get this right together, working in partnership, working cross-party, working locally, working nationally, with children, young people and families at the centre, ensuring the very best outcomes for them and sustainable finances for our city.
Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is for those that listen to social media, the naysayers, those who think politics doesn't matter. This is a reminder that who your government is matters. Who you elect to represent you matters. I'm proud of this budget. And to Councillor Nicholson's point, I am very passionate that through the Labour government's Pride in Place programme, the ward I represent, St Budo, has secured £20 million of investment over the next decade. A once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver real, lasting change in our ward. I want to pay tribute and offer my sincere thanks to our MP, Fred Thomas, who listened to the community and councillors, whose hard work and I suspect a bit of commando spirit in the corridors of Westminster secured this funding for St Budo. Pride in Place is about doing things differently. It's putting local people at the heart of decision-making, not imposing plans from the top down, but building plans and ambitions from the ground up. With leadership of the programme locally, Fred will be closely working with the council, the community and local partners to establish a neighbourhood board. This board will bring together residents, community groups, businesses and local representatives to co-design how this funding is spent, and that's really important. Applications to join the board have already been received and are being reviewed. As your St Budo councillors, The passionate Sally Hayden and passionate John Dingle and myself are already out in the community, listening to residents, speaking to local organisations and understanding their priorities. Whether it's revitalising our high street, investing in youth services, improving green spaces, enhancing community facilities, creating new opportunities for skills and employment, this investment must reflect what matters to them, the community. This is St Budo's £20 million, St Budo's future. But working together, we can turn this investment into visible improvements that restore pride, create opportunity, and strengthen St Budo for years to come. The future of our ward is bright, and this is just the beginning. And I'd say that's the same for our city. Thank you very much, and I recommend this budget to members.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Members in the Chamber today, I am just going to speak briefly regarding the Tamar Bridge and Tall Point Ferry Joint Committee. I'd like to start by offering some background information regarding the Joint Committee and Tamar crossings for the last 12 months, which relates to the current and forthcoming year budget. At the beginning of our tenure, in June 2025, the Joint Chairs requested the new Chief Officer to undertake a review of all income and expenditure within the Tamar Crossings budget as part of the budget setting process for 26-27. Whilst that work continues, the budget presented today takes account of the recommendations received so far to date. However, a recommendation to increase the Tamar Tag monthly admin fee from 80p per month to £2 per month to meet costs has been put on hold now until a public consultation has been completed. The consultation will commence on the 9th of March, and a report and further recommendations will be made to the Joint Committee at the June meeting. Subject to the outcome of the consultation, a revised budget may be presented to the parent authorities, Plymouth City Council and Cornwall Council, for approval during the summer. In the meantime, we are likely to continue to draw down on our existing reserves. Thank you.
Councillor Penrose.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think everybody in the Chamber is so aware of the pressures on the finances of all local authorities. We know that costs and demands are the four basic things that we have to provide for: adult social care, children's services, SEND provision, and homeless. We know there is a demand, it's going up and up. So I was one of those, when we went to our first meetings to hear about what was going to be in the budget, I was full of trepidation about what we were going to see. And I'm so relieved and encouraged to see that in all those four areas, there are budget lines for really strong, innovative, preventative measures. Because we all know that those areas will grow and grow and grow unless, as Councillor Creswell said, we address them at the beginning, early intervention, and it can be done in all of those, to prevent older people having to go into care. It can all be done to prevent children. Look at Sure Start. I think this is a difference between the Conservative and the Labour approach. Conservatives shut down a very good system that it's been proved in a lot of academic work in the last 5 years. What a difference Sure Start made in many areas of children's, the way they turned out. And that was cut down. Now, in this budget, you'll see lots of new innovations into wellbeing hubs and other provision for young children. So I'm so relieved and so encouraged by, if you like, the enlightenment shown in some of this work. Like, we're going back into providing our own children's homes instead of spending all that money out in other services far away into private providers' hands. So I just want to say how relieved I am, how inspired I am. Thank you very much.
Councillor McNamara.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I support this budget, and on behalf of Councillors Hendy and Murphy, I'd like to address the slurs we've had from this side about Labour councillors not standing up for their wards. It's nonsense. It's not true. In Efford, we've had Efford Lane resurfaced with the first wellbeing hub in the city, which is going to lead to longer library opening hours. And with the work of Councillor Lang, we're having £1.1 million spent on the Efford Youth Centre. There's a meeting in there 3:30 this afternoon about a housing development for rental housing. This budget is going to carry on that great work, which we've been fighting for our residents for years. And to say we're not doing it is a disgrace. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ricketts.
Good afternoon, my Lord Mayor. So, we had budget scrutiny. I want to thank Councillor Coker for doing his very best to chair the meeting. I did raise at the beginning of the meeting about last year in the WhatsApp group that was set up with only Labour scrutiny members and cabinet members, which was absolutely outrageous. I appreciate Mark assuring me that that didn't happen this year, so I appreciate that. The public deserve better. You've got to remember, you've got the numbers now as a Labour council, and this room is full of Labour councillors. That will even up in a few weeks' time. But at the moment, you've got to remember that the people want to hold you to account. And I know you really don't like it, but you need to remember that we've got a job to do, okay? There's lots of things in the budget we like, but we are the opposition. So when I'm in a scrutiny meeting such as that, it was unfortunate that Councillor Finn couldn't make it through ill health. And it was basically myself, Councillor Poyser was there as well, holding the whole of the council to account, yeah? And it's almost like that in this council chamber. So a bit of respect, yeah? That's all we're saying. And when we're throwing out ideas and opinions, take it for what it is. It's not personal, okay? So the background is that. Now, when we opened the budget papers, there were things in there. There was a lot of reds in there, a lot of red lines, and we can obviously see that we're in a lot of trouble. And when we looked at the almost £1 million reduction in homelessness and rough sleeping, 809,000, and I raised that, you know, that's worrying from the off. It was one of the craziest situations where Councillor Smith decided to ask a question to Councillor Penberthy at the last council meeting following that, asking if that was a code of conduct offence to, quote, publish figures. An unbelievable situation that was. Questions were also asked in scrutiny about the crisis in foster caring. An absolute crisis on our hands on your watch, where we can't seem to find a single family. And that came out in budget scrutiny as well. And my position on this is that this failure is causing us to have to buy up assets around the city to a cost of £2 million. And if we keep going to that, we will bankrupt this council. So I made suggestions to improve the recruitment, to look at empty properties around the city, to look at our own assets, to convert what we have. And these were put in recommendations by the board. But the comeback on it, on just trying to do the best for young people and putting some ideas out there and looking at budget implications, were quite unbelievable. Okay, we know the box is doing well. Yeah, we know. You tell us every day of the week. We all know that. I want some more attention where it really matters, and that's on foster caring at the moment. So we want you to just focus on that, because that's a very serious issue. We have net zero madness as a staple diet for this Labour administration, trying to absolutely wreck the city in a few short years, not to 2060, 2070, to 2030. There's been absolutely no progress that's been made. And we have 12 million set aside for the Chelsea Meadows Solar Farm project, which has got disaster written all over it. But thank you for cycling into every meeting, Tom. The Manadon Roundabout. The Manadon Roundabout, an absolute shambles. It will wreck this city.
Councillor Ricketts finish.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It will wreck this city. It will bring us to an absolute standstill. And compounded with that, Councillor Stevens thinks it's a good idea to allocate money to block Mutley Plain. He's looked at every single junction where all the hazards are, and he's found the safest junction in the city to attach funding to. Utter madness, and the people will not forget what you've done. We've thrown in the towel on Central Park. The last $500,000 has been rolled around in the mud. The floodplains have opened up. You've just thrown in the towel on it. An absolute disgrace. We're nearly to £1 billion of debt, okay? And what we need to do is cut our cloth accordingly. And that means when minimum wage has gone up 33% in the last few years, it's not the time for us as a council to be operating on living wage, to employ less people.
Councillor Ricketts, can you please finish your sentence?
And give... This sums up this Labour Council, Lord Mayor. A 5% increase is completely unacceptable. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. This budget presents truly enormous levels of debt, reaching almost £1 billion in March 2027 and exceeding that figure in the following year. This is money chosen to be spent now, money which will now be owed by every man, woman and child in this city for decades to come. It should be noted that we are custodians of these positions, custodians of our city. 20 years ago, the debt level was £25 million. I wonder if people were to ask those councillors then if they would support such an increase in debt, and what councillors in 20 years' time will say of us. £50 million is the authorised limit by which we will be within £50 million of the authorised limit in 2028. That is flying so close to the wind that it is, I think, really very problematic indeed. The Council acknowledges that our funding levels are insufficient to match the scale of our statutory service demand. And that is why you look at highways. We recognise that highways will not be repaired over the next 70 years. It will take 70 years to repair all of our highways. It is an enormously difficult situation that we are in. And it is because that we are so close to our debt ceiling, it's because we are unable to fund the services we require, that council tax will rise by 5%, 2% above inflation. You don't help the cost of living by increasing taxation above inflation and increasing fees and charges. That being said, I believe that every member of this chamber advocates for their wards and works for their residents in their own ways. And I don't believe that any personal attack in here is appropriate. I'd like to also put on the record my thanks for the multi-year settlement. That was missing in recent years, and it is very appropriate that it has now been included. That is a positive for sure. I'd like to turn to one very specific area. Now, in last year's papers, on page 82, the liability benchmark table stated that our net loans requirement reduced to zero in 2062. Now, in this year's papers, the liability benchmark table on page 151 has changed significantly to the one presented 12 months ago. In this year's papers, it says the net loans requirement has increased to £175 million and remains in place for a further 13 years until 2075. Last year, the liability benchmark table stated that our liability benchmark would reduce to zero in 2068. But in this year's papers, it has increased to £250 million and also remains in place until 2075. The loan CFR seems to have reduced slightly, perhaps by £40 million, out to 2074. But the accompanying descriptions gives no real detail on why such amendments have occurred. So it would be very useful in future if we could have a proper explanation of why these very large variances have occurred in just a 12-month period, because in my experience, that is unusual. I'd just like to finish by thanking all the officers who put together the budget There is an awful lot of work that goes into producing this, but I really must reiterate the concern that I have that we are approaching and then exceeding £1 billion worth of debt. That is not something we can possibly look at lightly, and I really think that needs to be looked at. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I support this budget. And on behalf of the residents and people of Honnicknoll, we passionately welcome the transformation of Honnicknoll Youth Centre, which has been completely revitalised into a fantastic space for young people with a £1.2 million investment. It really does show what we can achieve when we invest not only in facilities, but also in the fantastic people who provide these vital services.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. As Chair of Audit and Governance, I'm happy to speak in support of the budget and just wanted to touch base on the position of the Council's reserves. The Section 151 officer has confirmed that the current level of usable reserves is adequate to support the 2026 to 27 budget on the basis that the organisation delivers within the approved spending and savings envelope. This professional assurance underpins the Council's financial strategy for the year ahead and reflects progress made in strengthening resilience while navigating sustained demand and inflationary pressures. During 26-27, £2.752 million is planned to be drawn down to balance the budget, and with provision also made to manage the in-year pressure of around £4 million, should that not be fully mitigated. The projected closing balance of reserves available is £53 million by the end of the financial year 26-27. In practical terms, this means the Council retains a prudent, though not unlimited, buffer to manage known risk and emerging pressures over the financial year. Reserves are about more than the often quoted general fund working balance. Alongside this balance, the Council holds a range of earmarked reserves set aside for specific purposes and risks, including support for schools-related balances, smoothing collection fund volatility, and managing movements on interest rates. These reserves are actively reviewed during the year and part of the annual close-down process to ensure they remain aligned to the Council's priorities and can be repurposed if the risks shift. This does mean that the working balance remains as the Council's primary safeguard against unexpected events. Under our administration, the balance has been strengthened in recent years from a historic level of around £8 million, which external auditors consider too low, to just under £12 million. At approximately 4.9% of the 25 to 26 net revenue budget, this represents meaningful progress in rebuilding resilience. It does remain sensitive to relatively small movements, however. A 1% overspend, which equals around about £2.5 million, would reduce the working balance by more than 20% if not offset elsewhere. And this underscores the importance of continued discipline in budget management. The medium-term financial plan sets out a phased replenishment path, including indicative top-ups of nearly £250,000 in 27 to 28, to nearly £500,000 in 28 to 29, and £0.6 million in both 29 to 30 and 30 to 31 years. This approach balances prudence with realism in the current operating environment. It's a political choice to responsibly manage our reserves while also drawing on them to deliver the things that matter to Plymouth residents and support our most vulnerable. This is what you get with a Labour council. The alternative is cuts and chaos with reform or the Tories, as we see right across the country today. This is a good budget that delivers for the people of Plymouth. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, for it does make you laugh when the country's being bankrupted at the same time. However, let's draw back. when we talk about an economy and a thriving Plymouth, all right, it only survives on the back of the economy. And an economy is less reliant on taxpayer funding. If we were to go back to 1982, we had a thriving city, a thriving economy, 14,500 in the dockyard. We had paper converting, Texas Instruments, Ryfords, Arrow Hart, Rank Bush Toshiba, all Texas Instruments, all medium-sized employers employing between 200 and 600 people. Where are they now? They're all gone. We keep on hearing this mantra, Babcock, Babcock, Babcock. I can tell you Babcock, when I was in the dockyard, they had 14,500 workers. We dealt with the carriers. We had 4 types of frigates. We had the amphibious ships. We had all the RFAs. We had the tugs. You had the work to sustain the workforce, and it put a lot of money into the British economy, Look at what Devonport's got now. It's got nothing. It's got frigate sheds that can't accommodate the new 26 or 31Es, which are going to Portsmouth. All right, so that's the end of ships there. We've got the Labour government taking away our amphibious ships and selling them to foreign navies. So that's less work there. So we're down to submarines and submarines only. So I failed to see how 3,000.
My point of order is, I wonder if you could direct Councillor Finn to talk to the budget.
Yeah, this is about the budget. This is about the economy, the money that you keep on saying. You keep on saying Babcock's a panacea and going to take this economy forward. It is not unless we get extra work into Babcock. Now, needless to say, I'll bring you back now to the debt.
Carry on, Councillor Finn.
All right, thank you. No debt is debt, whether it's borrowing or liabilities. With us heading to over £1 billion, council tax rising 2% over inflation. If we were not paying £100 million in the next 2 years, just for example, to service debt, page 163, we would have £100 million to provide for the core services of people of Plymouth are crying out for. We wouldn't have to borrow that money. And bearing in mind, any money that comes from government is taxpayers' money anyway. It's just doing a round robin till it comes back into our pocket. So everything we've heard going forward is based on what the government has given the city. Well, it's only given us back the bloody money that we pay in anyway. So just to correct that point, now, we have a problem with the accounts here, because if you look at it, when you voted in the budget last year, and let's make sure I get the figures up, we have a problem because PFI lease liabilities listed 24th of March, 118.5 million. March 25, 219 million. March 26, 217 million. 215 million for 27. At the last audit and governance meeting, it was interesting to note that, and it's noted in your paper today, so you voted for that last year. What has changed in a year? And this is the biggest problem that we have on these benches. Debt liabilities now down to 99, 928, 86, 80 and 743. So we're looking at discrepancies of £124 million. And don't take my word for it, it's in pages 162, 163, and if you want to refer to the same document last year. Now, how can we base a budget when we don't know where these figures are gone? And I'm going to say further, from the opposition benches, we've asked 4 times in audit and governance, could you please put down and explain these PFI debt and lease liabilities? Could you please break it down for us? Has it been forthcoming in the last 2 years? No. So we consider that total disrespect to the councillors. Now, we can't hold a budget to account if we haven't got the right figures here. And when you've got such massive holes, and £124 million just disappeared, with no answers, how can we be seen to agree to it? We want a thriving city. We want a city that's going forward, but we need the businesses in Plymouth to do that. We need less tax subsidy, more business. And that is what we stand for. And therefore, we won't be approving the budget today.
Councillor Dingle.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I echo my ward colleague, Councillor McCarthy's earlier sentiments on the great news the Pride of Place funding brings to St Budo. And I'd like to add that St Budo residents will be relieved that after 6 years of relentless campaigning by my other ward colleague, Councillor Sally Hayden, to replace the derelict and disgusting St Budo toilets on the square, this is finally going to happen. An application has now been submitted to enable the demolishing and replacing of the current building with a modern unit. This is much needed for the square, especially with St Budel being an interchange and providing essential facilities for the residents shopping on the square, and of course our taxi and bus drivers. This should also help reduce even further the antisocial behaviour on the square. Thank you.
Councillor Bryansdale.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'd like to begin by thanking officers and Cabinet colleagues, particularly Councillor Lowry, who've worked extremely hard to bring this budget forward today. But I also need to respond to a couple previous speeches. Councillor Ricketts, you criticised investment in solar, and Councillor Wood also explored headline borrowing figures without breaking down the income that much of it continues to generate above borrowing costs. So I want to reiterate a fact. This council has already delivered annual savings of well over £1 million through our energy efficiency and renewable energy capital investments. Some of our solar projects, Councillor Ricketts, like Chelson Meadow Recycling Centre and Prince Rock Depot, have a payback period of less than 5 years before they deliver a financial surplus. Solar alone generates hundreds of thousands of pounds each year for Plymouth City Council that we can then redirect to other services that our communities care deeply about. I would hope that you wouldn't want us to lose that opportunity. And that's why this budget contains investment that will help make further savings to the energy bills of both our council buildings, but also to Plymouth homes. I am creating a dedicated energy and infrastructure planning team to make root and branch changes to how we manage all our water and energy use. By having a focus on better data analysis, usage monitoring, and driving out waste, we envisage that in years to come, there is certainly the potential for another £1 million of annual savings on top of that figure I just quoted. The capital pipeline contains £3 million for further investor-saved business cases around energy efficiency, as well as over £5 million of national government grants, which will directly support the retrofitting of low-income households. So far from the colder and poorer nonsense that we've heard in this chamber in previous meetings, this investment will quite literally help keep Plymouth warmer and better off. To turn to the other side of my portfolio, soon after inheriting this role, you might recall I spent a disproportionate amount of time discussing grass-cutting complaints. Listening to communities, a previous Labour budget under this administration added £300,000 to help tackle that issue. The impact has been huge. Between 2024 and 2025, so in just 1 year, grass-cutting complaints from residents dropped by 80%, and even by councillors by 70%. And the thing that really drove it home for me is, you might recall that we have an annual workshop to discuss grass cutting. A few years ago, Warspite Room was filled of councillors coming with complaints from communities, quite well-deserved complaints. This year, you might not realise this, not a single one of you turned up, because there's a general level of contentment over how much this administration has improved that service level. So I'm pleased to confirm today that we will be rolling on that grass-cutting uplift to continue to deliver this improved service level. I want to end on a topic which is very close to my heart, not just as a councillor, but as a dad of 2 young children. The last Plymouth Labour manifesto contains an important line that I think about often: to make our city the best place to grow up in. It has been a joy to see what Cabinet colleagues have furthered to help make that dream a reality. The fantastic sports facilities at Fulston Park, the commitment to keep Mount Wise pools free for families, ecotherapy for young people at Full Pool Farm, the newly refurbished youth centres in Efford and Honicknall, which have already been mentioned today, the swim safe sessions at Tinside, and there's so much more coming forward with this budget. To name just a few, the Blue and Green Skills Campus at the Civic Centre, more children's homes in public hands, and a new school for children with special educational needs and disabilities. But this budget also contains a big step change in play provision that I hope helps to fulfil that manifesto commitment. We are doubling play park maintenance revenue spend for 26 to 27, which will help us keep an estate of over 120 equipped areas, both safe and accessible. I'm even more delighted to confirm that work is progressing well on a capital business case for a £3.7 million programme of play site development. As it currently stands, we are looking to enhance 20 existing playgrounds, add 4 destination play parks that will offer a truly exciting experience for families, and also to create 10 innovative nature playable spaces. It will help us to create a sustainable, inclusive, and high-quality play network across Plymouth, where children and young people of all ages and abilities can be active, have fun, through play, promoting healthier lifestyles and stronger connections to nature. Lord Mayor, I will be supporting this budget.
Councillor Matt Smith.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't really know where to start with some of the stuff that we've heard from that side of the room today. I personally was very pleased to read these papers because this is a budget that protects services in the city, avoids cuts, and actually reflects the values of those of us that sit on this side of the chamber, which really are in stark contrast to the majority on that side of the chamber too. And, you know, it protects services and avoids cuts whilst facing difficult circumstances, and I'll disagree with Councillor Lugger about how multifaceted the challenges to local government finance are. There are challenges to local government finance because we had 14 years of austerity, where 60p in every pound of this government's funding from central government was cut. During that time, Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Ricketts, you were Conservative councillors, and you sat there whilst that went on. So how you can have the brass neck to stand up today and say that you're somehow the only 2 councillors in this city that maybe stand up for your residents is shameful, it's embarrassing.
Could you please give Councillor Smith the right to speak?
He can carry on if he likes. And you know, there are small council tax rises in this budget, but it's nothing compared to the 12.5% that was imposed on this city by Councillor Nicholson when he led Plymouth City Council back in 2001. So it's interesting to hear that from him too. So you know, the alternative to this budget would be reform. It would be the Conservatives. It would be cuts. It would mean no new children's homes. It would mean no new youth centres. And thank God that our people on that side of the room are nowhere near control of this council. Thank you.
Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I'd like to agree with Councillor Smith that the years of austerity were so damaging when you consider that the Labour government from 1997 to 2010, year on year, gave local government an increase in spending, and I'm pleased to see that is now slowly about to be reversed. All councils have budget challenges, and it was ever thus. I remember my father struggling to set the rates of the London Borough back in the day. But the decisions ultimately taken set the priorities and the direction of travel. And so I'm really pleased to see what's in this budget, which talks about growth for our city, prosperity for our city and for our people, whilst protecting the most vulnerable. This year, despite the growing pressures on adult and children's social care on our finances, we have, with significant government support, produced a budget which protects the vulnerable in our city, retains things like bus services, which if not subsidised by this council would not be running, supports our cultural offer, of which the Box and Theatre Royal Plymouth are 2 very popular and successful examples, bringing people and money into the city. Other parties across the country, perhaps a bit new on the scene, thought they could cut swathes through council budgets. Reform councils suggested cutting council tax support to the most vulnerable. They found they couldn't do it, and I was pleased to hear some of the opposition people talking about the importance of council tax support to vulnerable people. Kent County Council, under reform, have upped their spending, not reduced it, as promised. They're still looking to cut library services, and so I was very pleased to hear from Councillor Hayden the positive words about how we support our library services in this city. One council has upped its council tax by a whopping 9%, a reform council. Here in Plymouth, we are managing to keep ours at the lowest level in the southwest as of today. We are getting a bang for our buck in this city. Armada Way is progressing well and will be a huge draw. Royal Parade bus improvements will enable people to get easily into the heart of the city. The new diagnostic centre in Colin Campbell Court will have a dramatic influence on health outcomes in the poorest parts of the city, in my ward in particular. Again, a scheme supported by the council. Our continued support for the National Marine Park has enabled a number of improvements, as well as a lot of public engagement. I was surprised to hear Councillor Nicholson bemoaning the current level of council tax, given he was leader and oversaw the largest increase in council tax this city has seen. Yes, our council tax, you know, we're putting it up, but you don't get something for nothing. I wish we could, but we can't. And if we want to carry on improving our city, improving our services, it does have a cost. Everything has a cost, but that cost is affected by factors as diverse and unknown as Trump constantly changing trade tariffs, extreme weather, which is destructive and very expensive, as we've seen in West Hoe, and perhaps an increase in the minimum wage for the poorest employees, perhaps putting it up to the living wage. I think that's money well spent. And I thank our Cabinet and officer teams for navigating all these unknown challenges, and I would like to add my support to this particular budget.
Councillor Krisnak.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to every single worker within the Plymouth City Council, from a street sweeper to chief executive. And I think we need to remember that a contribution that they made to this budget is absolutely astronomical. With David as a chief officer in leading this budget, they looked at all aspects to balance the books. And when we talk about the budget, it is not a Labour budget, it is our budget. It includes all political spectrum. We all had the opportunity to view the budget before it came to this council chamber. We all had the opportunity to contribute, as it was rightfully stated, through scrutiny committee. As I understand it, there has been quite a lengthy debate about the budget. So to say that it is a Labour budget would be not telling the truth. It is our budget. When I think about the budget that affects my ward and the people that I represent, I can see so much has been done since the last budget. We have 2 new bus routes that are now connecting Plimpton with Plymstock. We have beautiful new things that are in a pipeline. We have a new foster home in Plymstock. We have a new foster home that will be put in action in the very near future that will provide additional capacity for children that need a foster care. And the foster care, as it was mentioned from the other side of the chamber, is something that we don't have a magic wand to solve it and resolve it. It's a complex and difficult issue and requires very, very delicate work and decision making. When I think about my ward and the provision of send delivery in my ward, recently my colleagues Maria and John, we visited a local school, and a school headmistress stated how glad and supported she was by the send team from the council, and Sally has been spearheading the work with all other partner organizations to help delivery of those services. And I know that we as a council have the opportunity to debate about this, but we need to be realistic and work within the parameters that we have. If we have £100 million, we have to work with £100 million. We cannot work with £150 million thinking about an imaginary world. But I know that this team on this side, with the leadership that we have, is delivering the best for the people of this city. I visited recently a member of my community that did not support Labour, full stop. But her words, I quote, "When we have a Labour administration, we have best outcome in our community." Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Bill Stevens.
Thank you. Apologies, Lord Mayor, I just got a WhatsApp message from Councillor Ricketts about the meeting today, so I don't want to hold anybody up. In answer to a colleague who put
Lord
a question...
Mayor, I didn't do that.
I'm sure we can look at who's hacking whose account later on. In answer to a colleague who posed the question to me as we were walking in today, this is the 28th budget I've been asked to support in this chamber, and I strongly support this one, which is, as usual for one recommended by a Labour leader of the council, full of responsibility, common sense priorities, and positive long-term visions for our city. Now, as the leader reminded us at the start of the discussion, a budget is far more than numbers on a balance sheet. It's a statement of our values. It shows what we believe matters most and how we can plan to move forward as a city together. And to me, nothing highlights this more than the hugely ambitious capital programme before us today. A strong statement of investment over the next 5 years, demonstrating a commitment to Plymouth's future and a clear understanding of what Plymouthians want us to prioritise. A 5-year capital programme stretching to hundreds of millions of pounds worth of investment, helping to provide, amongst other things, enhanced flood risk management, which will benefit those of us representing areas with particular hotspots. Finally, bringing forward the Royal Building, finalising the works to the Guildhall, showing our support for the National Marine Park, securing Fulston Park as a real asset for Devonport and the wider city, and maintaining, as we've heard, free swims at Mount Wise Pools for Devonport, a real asset from a Labour council. And we have a Labour council, again, that recognises people's concerns over the cost of living. And I know the huge effort that Mark Lowry and his finance officers have put in to keep the council tax variation to an absolute minimum. Now, Councillor Rainsford and Councillor Smith took us back to, quite rightly, to 2001. I only want to take us back to 2022, which was the last time Councillor Nicholson came into the chamber to support a Conservative budget. And there was a proposal from the then Labour opposition to freeze the council tax level, to not increase council tax at all that level. And that was successful. That got through. That was agreed to. But you know who voted against freezing council tax and putting council tax up? It was Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Mrs. Beer, who was then in the seat that you currently occupy, Lord Mayor. So when it comes to talking about opposing council tax increases, I think we need to hear a little less from the chuntering we currently do over on that side of the chamber. Now, like my St. Udo colleagues, I'm also extremely grateful for the Pride in Place money that part of our ward in Devonport has been awarded. Devonport, Mount Wise and Morristown are areas that have suffered greatly over the years, but the 20 million that we've been awarded, like St. Udo colleagues, is extremely welcome. It will help to build stronger communities by reconnecting people, restoring a sense of belonging and a sense of community. And the meetings that we've had so far, when people who don't know each other sit down and discuss the options and the exciting possibilities, has been inspiring for us to see. and Lord Mayor, I can't wait for that to happen. After 14 years of austerity from the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats as well, let's not forget, when our areas were targeted, were run down, and didn't really have much of a future, we have now turned the corner with a Labour government providing long-term hope and stability. Going alongside the Labour budget that we're voting on today, that makes me more optimistic about my ward and my city than I have been for a very, very long time. Nothing's solved yet. We haven't come out of the end of the tunnel, but there is light at the end of that tunnel. This is what happens when Labour MPs work alongside a Labour government,
Councillor
and we
Stevens,
have
could you
Labour
please finish your
councillors
sentence?
passionately standing up for their areas, and I'm happy to support this today.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wanted to stand today and talk about our plans for a new customer experience strategy, our plans for measures to prevent the digital exclusion of vulnerable residents in this city, or the success of Plymouth Active Leisure and how we've chosen to keep the Mountwise swimming pools free for everyone in the city. But instead, lots of that good news is drowned out by people who frankly should know better on the other side of the chamber. And I think there are a few people who are a little bit confused about what they do or don't believe in, or in the case of Councillor Finn, what decade we're in currently. Councillor Nicholson talks about standing up for our communities. Although he has reinvented himself now as an independent, he was, of course, a Conservative leader of this council, and he's not an unintelligent man. He's not new to politics. He will know that you do not fix local government by just shouting at it. You fix it by making arguments for investment in the areas that you care about. You identify issues, you raise them, you tackle them, you raise concerns on behalf of the communities that we represent, and we find solutions. He may want to have words with members of his own group who have raised concerns on behalf of their communities in the last year, less times than the number of fingers that I have on one hand. He could have brought an alternative budget today. He could have told us what he would do instead, but he hasn't. Perhaps it's because he has no ideas of his own. Councillor Ricketts speaks about fostering. He says he's just doing the best for young people and that he wants more attention on foster caring. His suggestion that this council is failing on this issue is quite frankly offensive to the incredible work being done by the fostering team in this council, who are putting every ounce of energy into finding suitable homes for vulnerable children, and is completely ignorant of the national picture on fostering. It's by no means unique to Plymouth. If Councillor Ricketts feels so strongly about this issue, I wonder why he won't attend corporate parenting, where there has been a vacancy for the independent group since the start of the municipal year. Perhaps you could come and raise your concerns there, try and do something about it. He says, we don't like to be held to account. I appeared at budget scrutiny despite being on holiday. He didn't ask me a single question in 2 hours. I brought the pay policy statement to the last council meeting. Silence, didn't ask me a single question. He sits next to Councillor Nicholson talking about the cost of living, while simultaneously suggesting that our own staff don't deserve the real living wage. Shame on him. Unlike Councillor Ricketts, I am really proud that this council is investing in our people. We're not cutting training, we're investing in upskilling, we're increasing apprenticeships, we're certainly not arguing against paying the real living wage for the very people who keep this council functioning. I will make it my personal mission to ensure that every member of staff in this council knows that you don't think they're worth the real living wage. At a time when councils face historic pressures, we need seriousness, stability, and above all else, we need compassion. What we do not need is performative politics that will not only leave our council's finances in chaos, but will leave vulnerable residents under attack. Thank God that isn't the case today. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. This budget enables us to support local people, has a focus on prevention and enables service transformation. I would like to thank Councillor Lowry and the officers he has worked with for this quite remarkable achievement. I'd also like to thank the government. This is the first time that there has been an increase in government core revenue funding since I was elected in 2011. This, combined with funding certainty for homelessness provision, is good news. However, the pressures created through 14 years of austerity will continue over coming years, and this budget addresses that challenge. So what does this budget deliver? So far this year, thanks to the hard work of our officers, we've provided housing advice and assistance to over 4,000 households and prevented and relieved homelessness for over 640 households. Preventing homelessness is at the heart of our activity, and the budget before us allows us to continue this vital work for local people, with budget growth of £797,000 being a mix of government cash and our own funding. It brings us support to homelessness to a level we've not seen before. We will continue the move from provision of pay-by-night to longer-term temporary accommodation to provide better support to homeless families. Between May 23 and March 25, we delivered 82 new units of temporary family accommodation. This year, we've already delivered 43, and within the budget, we have plans for at least another 24 units to come online next year. And not only families are benefiting. For homeless single people and couples, we have provided 154 new accommodation units between October 2023 and the end of March this year. Next year, thanks to this budget, a minimum of 53 new units will be delivered, with a focus on supported accommodation for young homeless people, many of whom will be care experienced. This year, we have taken the necessary steps to prepare for the implementation of the Renters' Rights Act. I would like to thank officers for their work on this, the South West Landlords Association for their advice, and the Housing and Community Scrutiny Committee for their review of our approach over a number of their meetings. I'm pleased that the budget means we will be delivering our responsibilities from May. People need more than temporary accommodation. They need permanent homes. And a plan for Homes 4, we're directly supporting the delivery of 1,765 homes. So far, 1,165 of these have been completed, with 700, that's 60% of them, being affordable. Our teams and partners working on this should be commended, especially in the current house building crisis. The £10,534,000 of capital spend allocated to Plan for Homes in this budget will support the delivery of the next 600 homes. This budget provides substantial support through our council tax support scheme. Approximately half of the recipients are pensioners, and a large majority of the working age recipients are in employment. For those of working age, this is means tested and not about the council tax bill. So I just wanted to correct both of those areas of misinformation from Councillor Nicholson. The budget also provides over £5 million for the delivery of the Thriving Communities Action Plan, which we discussed at scrutiny last week. And it's not only in housing where this budget will make a major difference. The capital pipeline supports our corporate estate to move from reactive repairs to a proactive approach, with an allocation of £14,250,000 of programmed maintenance works over the coming 5 years. And in recognising the specific challenges that being a coastal city brings, I'm really pleased that for the first time, there is £2 million worth of foreshore contingency allowance built into the budget for the same period. Finally, and I congratulate Councillor Hayden on her passionate tenacity, I'm really pleased that this budget includes the capital required to replace the public toilets in St Buda Square within the next 12 months. Good example of a ward councillor passionately doing things for their local residents. Lord Mayor, this is a budget that will deliver for local people and the city. It has my full support.
Councillor Hendy.
I just want to reiterate what my ward colleague, Councillor McNamara said. So I really welcome the 1.1 million investment into the Efford Youth Club. We now have F1 simulators are actually linked to the F1 racing team. We've got a fully kitted music room. We've got new kitchen space, a computer suite, many new really swanky chill-out areas. Spaces on the outside's been refurbed. It's a really, really great outside space. It's a real welcoming space. It was ever so much needed, and that for the young people, and now it's a big improved area also for the staff. They've got a place where they can come to work, which is really, really pleasurable. And I welcome this investment in the city, and this budget, I support it because of that. And also, there's one other thing which is slightly different. Many of you know I'm on the Fire Authority, and my colleagues were there only last week, and we voted for a Band D property to be increased by £5. People say to us, what do we get extra for our money? It's not what we get extra for our money, it's the fire cover that we retain. And I put the question to the fire chief and said, if we don't raise this £5 per money, what happens? He said, I will have to put in place significant cuts to service. And there's no way that I can vote for my family, my friends, my residents, and anybody that's in Plymouth to be less safe in the weeks moving forward than they currently are today. Therefore, I'll support this budget.
Councillor Lang. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think certainly on this side we can agree that this budget is about what we're protecting. We're protecting services that people need and enjoy, and we're protecting people. Coupled with that, it's full of real ambition, which is the hallmark of a Labour administration. You will see there is an allocation of £11.93 million of growth in the budget in children's. This is driven by inflation, rising demand, and increased costs of placements. Just to put it in context a bit, in 2015-16, we spent £27.372 million on children's services. This year just gone, our forecast is £77.350 million. That's a difference of nearly 50 million, or 282.59%. It's clear that demands for children's services across the country continues to rise, and costs continue to outpace levels of funding. Nearly a quarter of the children who we care for live more than 20 miles from Plymouth. 65 of them are in residential homes, where weekly costs for new placements now average £9,451, with the most complex cases can reach up to £25,000 per week. We can continue to lobby the government and speak to anybody we can to advocate for this obviously broken market to be fixed. But this is the reality not just Plymouth, but local authorities across the country face. But even in the face of all that, we are taking decisive and evidence-based action. Through our Family Homes for Plymouth Children programme, and with significant senior leadership across the service, we are reshaping our model of provision. We're reshaping our model of provision. We are buying our own homes. And when I say that, I talk about family homes. And I want to give this council my reassurance. We won't be putting children in converted office blocks, which is Councillor Rickett's suggestion. We've delivered an improved fostering marketing campaign this year. And, contrary to what Councillor Ricketts might like to say, we've increased the number of local people interested in fostering. The number of children in care placed with our own foster carers is now 158. And we are certainly not in crisis. And you know what, Councillor Ricketts, when you use that word, you talk down our incredible fostering teams. You talk down their extraordinary commitment. And you know what, worst of all? You talk down our foster carers. How dare you do that? Councillor Ricketts, how dare you? And I really welcome the government's national focus on this now. So we've improved our support to foster carers, both financially, including continued exemption from council tax, and our incredible 4 Mockingbird constellations, and there will be more. So this is a budget that protects the most vulnerable, but it also protects and supports investment in culture. We've had a track record of cross-party support for investment in culture for many years, and I think it's plain for all to see we're now beginning to reap those rewards. You might want to put your fingers in your ears, Councillor Ricketts, because I am going to talk about the box. We've all heard about Berylmania. The economic impact behind this is huge for our visitor economy as well as for the box. And looking to 2026 and beyond, our cultural ambition has never been higher. All of the success and all of this opportunity is because in this budget and in previous budgets, this chamber has backed culture. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it makes good financial sense. And my hope is we will all continue to do so. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Holloway.
I did have an initial point for Councillor Finn, but perhaps Councillor Luggie can pass this on. I greatly enjoyed the Finn annual lecture on economics, and I'm sure we could all do with the benefit of Councillor Finn's annual lecture on history. Perhaps for his next lecture, he could tell us which party was in power during the period, during the 80s, when the dockyard had the industrial decimation so affecting families in Plymouth. Perhaps for that lecture, he could tell us which party was in power when HMS Bulwark and HMS Albion were mothballed over 14 years. To the contrary, now we have a Labour government that has had £14 billion worth of investment developed for our defence pipeline. We are developing a changing nature of defence plan, modernising for the future. He might be stuck in the past, but we're looking to the future. I want to acknowledge the scrutiny process. Thank you to Councillor Coker for avid chairing of 3 days that many of us did for that. We would have benefited, I think, from Conservative colleagues given some feelings around the table. I know they weren't able to make that one, and also recent growth and infrastructure sessions where we've been talking a lot about the nature of the defence economy in Plymouth as well. I want to build on Councillor Lang's point around our children's care provision and what we're doing on fostering. One of the recommendations made by the Scrutiny Management Board was how can we do more as a campaigning council to advocate for a windfall tax against these, frankly, profiteering, rapacious companies that take profits from the most vulnerable and the public sector that are trying to service for those most vulnerable under our statutory obligations. There is more we can do here, and I know she and Leader are keen to work on that, so I would love for this council to return to that. Finally, there's lots in this budget for Drake Ward, which is why I so support it. The safeguarding of the 30 and 31 subsidised bus routes that the Conservative Council took away and then Labour brought back. The commitments to develop the railway station into the thriving modern transport hub we all want to see. And yes, the box, the pride of Drake Ward and the pride of Plymouth. Thank you so much for all this council does to celebrate it in Plymouth and on the national stage. Thank you.
Councillor Gilmore.
Obviously, I'm rising to support the budget. Before I say any more, I'd like to just remind my two colleagues here, one of whom's not here at the moment, that I hope you both know that I genuinely like and respect you as councillor colleagues very much indeed. You did, however, quote Mrs. Thatcher. You said that she said you can't spend money that you don't have. In a sense, I agree with her. I think if you think about spending money that you don't have, then that's a bit like running up a credit card bill, isn't it? And I would agree that that's not a good thing. But Councillor Dan made the point that what we're doing here is we're investing money. And we all invest money that we don't have if we're possibly able to. And we do that for a brighter and better future. That's why we do that. And I think that when we're talking about debt in this situation, we're not talking about Plymouth running up a credit card debt. We're talking about Plymouth buying into the future of its young people, because they're the ones who are going to run the city, live in the city, work in the city, improve the city, pay for the city, and bluntly pay for us as we go into our old ages. So just, you know, a little point about what Mrs. Thatcher said. She said something else very famously, and I bet some people over there can guess what I'm going to say, which is she said there's no such thing as society. This budget tells me that there is very much such a thing as society, alive and kicking in Plymouth. And I'll tell you why. This is a cradle-to-grave budget for the people of Plymouth. It starts off right at the beginning with what Councillor Penrose was talking about, Sure Start, proven to have been one of the most wonderful things done for children in our lifetimes. And now, although not coming back in name, coming back in spirit through this budget. We're starting to get some of the money back from children's homes providers so that we can reinvest that money into the people. We were spending money on safer streets. Councillor Stevens and I spent one morning alongside colleagues, officer colleagues, at the Safer Streets launch in Estover. And it was a wonderful example of society. Parents, residents, local people just driving through were happy to listen to us, explain to them why they couldn't park where they wanted to park, and to move on. They absolutely got that this was a society question. And rolling out Safer Streets is a magnificent project. I couldn't support it enough. We're spending money on training young people into jobs that this budget is going to be creating in green industries, in energy industries, in construction, in the dockyard, and therefore in all the other jobs that will support those people in work, in other industries, all those spin-off jobs. The culture which will bring people into the city and encourage them to come and live here with their salaries and buy property and pay council tax. The well-being hubs, which have benefited so many wards around the place, including, of course, Moorview. And then finally, Councillor Hayden talks about capping funeral costs and holding those down so they don't go up. So literally, cradle to grave, this is all about people in Plymouth. And I started off by paying respect to my colleague here. I don't want to pick any fights, but I do want to just point out that to reduce the thousands of hours that this represents into a niggle about car parking charges is to absolutely underestimate the intelligence of the people in this city who know what we have to spend money on. We have to spend it on keeping our people well and safe. And that is what this budget is doing, and that is why I'm standing to defend it. Thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. And Councillor Lowry, I know what this time of year means to you. So thank you, and to the officers. I've recently been held accountable for a budget, so newfound respect. We're talking a lot about the damage from the previous Conservative government, and there is absolutely no doubt that they brought the poorest in society to their knees. However, we do have something far scarier on the horizon that threatens our equality. And so I do ask, I have no thread to pick from this budget. I only ask that the white paper you're so excited about is held to account. You do hold the government to account. Our children who are SEND will have the education that they deserve, and they will not face further barriers for that. And you have the opportunity to make sure that we do that. We don't let in people who will take away our equal rights. Thank you.
Councillor Bannerman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to speak about why I believe equality and equity are core principles that are being made for Plymouth in this year's budget. A budget is far more than a financial plan. It's a statement of our priorities as a city. It shows who we support, how we respond to the challenges our residents face, and the future we as a Labour Council are determined to build. Embedding fairness into every decision isn't just the right thing to do, it's preventative and financially responsible. Equality gives everyone the same opportunity. Equity recognises that some of our communities face different barriers and therefore need different forms of support to thrive. When we ignore that reality, inequality deepens. When we address it, we reduce long-term demand on services, strengthen resilience, and help every part of Plymouth and every resident flourish. This budget gives us a chance to invest in early intervention, to shape services around the needs of the people who use them, and to ensure that capital investment reaches communities that have historically been underserved. Fairness isn't an add-on, it's the foundation of effective public service delivery. We know that challenges linked to health, housing, transport access, income and disability are not evenly spread across Plymouth. Recognising these differences is not special treatment to an individual, resident or a service, it's responsible governance. It ensures that every pound we spend has the greatest possible impact and prevents greater costs down the line. Ultimately, a fair budget protects essential services, strengthens opportunities. It says that every child in Plymouth deserves a strong start, every family deserves stability, and every neighbourhood deserves to feel valued and heard. I feel that this budget makes every pound work for the people that we serve. And this budget has undoubtedly faced difficult decisions to be produced. But I feel that it is shaped by equality and equity, and it does exactly that. I support this budget as I believe shows Plymouth that we are a council that plans for long-term, invests wisely, and believes in potential of every community in our beautiful city. Thank you.
Councillor Aspinall.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to provide an update on adult social care and to outline our budget position for the year ahead. By the end of this financial year, our adult social care service has continued to support almost 4,000 people across Plymouth, and we know that these demands locally and nationally continue to grow year on year. Our health and care system has faced increasing levels of demand, and we have worked closely with the NHS and partners to prevent avoidable hospital admissions, reduce delays for those leaving hospital, and improve waiting times for assessments. I'm pleased to say these efforts are working. More people are returning home safely after a hospital stay, and waiting times are coming down. Despite these achievements, the year has not been without its challenges. We have managed the impact of a care home closure and the national failure of our community equipment service provider. And that was affecting about a third of the councils in the country. So you can imagine the chaos everywhere there initially. Plymouth City Council has now been judged by the CQC as given a good rating. This is significant, and then we want to thank our staff and our partners for the dedication and professionalism in delivering that outcome. Looking ahead, adult social care continues to face rising levels of need, complexity and cost, both locally and nationally. To meet these pressures, our focus remains on prevention and early intervention, helping people stay independent for as long as possible, something that most older people like. Working closely with the NHS and our communities to improve outcomes for people and their carers. Their carers are as important as anybody else. Developing and strengthening our care market to meet current and future needs. Our proposed budget for 26-27 reflects that priority. For the coming financial year, the draft net budget for adult social care is 121.555 million, an increase of 11.175 million on the current year. This will increase the care package budget to 140 million, and 11.175 million growth includes 4.352 million on funding national living wage and inflationary increases, and 6.823 million on growing demand and wider inflationary pressures. This investment demonstrates our commitment to supporting vulnerable residents and ensuring our system remains sustainable. Within the Council's capital budget, you will also note the provision for Meadow View. This is going to be a most wonderful building, and I think we are going to give the park its run for its money on this one. And this will replace an outdated Colville Lodge and the Vines. These are buildings that we use for adults who have learning difficulties. They're open 365 days a year. They do a fantastic job, but the places they are held in are no longer fit for purpose. I want again to express my thanks to everyone working in health and adult social care across our city. This is a demanding but deeply meaning profession, and your commitment is their commitment is recognised and appreciated. Lord Mayor, I'm sure you've been to several of our care homes over this past year, and you've learnt for yourself how wonderful job our staff there do. So a big thank you to everybody, and a big thank you to the members of staff that work in that area. And Gary, thanks for all your support. It's been brilliant and well appreciated. And I suppose I ought to say, public health, we have a budget for that, but it's usually pinned down for certain things. And Steve and his team are doing great on that, and we're moving forward with all our priorities on that. So Lord Mayor, I commend this budget, and I will be supporting it.
Councillor Tippett.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. There we go. Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Firstly, I would like to start by thanking Councillor Brysdale for the hard work he's done to improve grass cutting in Compton. It was a big issue and it has got a lot better, so it is really important we do celebrate those positives, and that's come from residents as well, so thank you for that. My Lord Mayor, the administration acknowledged in the budget that there is massive pressure on the council to deliver adult social care services. It is a national issue that we are being expected to fix locally. And I do also welcome the fact that we've had increased funding in our budget, which does help in the short term. However, I'd like to urge the administration today to keep the pressure up on the government. We have got the social care review, but that needs to be completed in 1 year and not 3, because it is so important that we keep up the message and say that we won't be happy with adult social care services until Plymouth taxpayers don't have to keep paying the price for adult social care services nationally that aren't working. So I do welcome the improvements for the short term, but please do keep up that pressure because we have got an opportunity to improve it. It's just important we do it quickly. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Nay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm not going to support this budget today because, as it's already been said by lots of members, I am a naysayer, okay? I'm going to bring it back to the Labour manifesto and the pledge from Labour of the promise of no council tax rises. It's as basic as that. They were elected on a manifesto promise of no council tax rises.
Would you please listen?
Anyway, good heavens, look what we've got today, a council tax rise. Yep. The mounting debt and the interest payments, good heavens, I can't support that. And I'm speaking for my ward residents too, they would not support it. I would like to thank our 2 Plymouth MPs too for helping to grow the economy. Unfortunately, that economy is in Manchester while they're up there canvassing for the Labour Party. Thank you.
Councillor Lowry, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm very grateful for everyone's contribution today. It's been incredibly enlightening. And yes, it's fine to have different views and opinions, but it's not fine to have different facts. And contained within this budget is an extra £10.6 million this year from the Labour government. That is a fact, okay? It is the largest increase in government funding for the last 15 years. Previous to that, of course, we either had a very, very small increase in funding or next to nothing at all. So I'm very grateful for that. So you'll be pleased to hear that we can all sort of breathe a sigh of relief. There's no cuts going to happen in the next financial year because of this additional funding. You'll also be aware, of course, that we've got the 3-year government funding. This allows us to plan ahead, and there's a sort of commitment from central government that we'll get a minimum of 6% funding every year for the next 3 years. That 6% equates to £19.8 million every year. So nearly £60 million over the next 3 years. So we can plan ahead now, knowing we've got that money, and provide the much needed improvement in public services that you've heard so many advocating for today. You've also heard Councillor Creswell talk about the DFG deficit. This is good news because it means less borrowing, less interest that we have to pay on that borrowing. And that, of course, means we've got more money for public services. That's somewhere in the region of about 1.6 to 1.8 million pounds. So this budget is not about reducing public services or providing cuts. There is more money, Councillor Nicholson, for repairing potholes. I can assure you of that. If you refer to page 132, table 3, it provides you with all that information. There's more money for bin collection, more money for libraries. I've even put some extra money in the budget to provide for improved public realm maintenance of Royal Parade, Armada Way, and the city centre generally, because it's been neglected of the past and it needs to be maintained properly. And you'll also see there's £25 million been allocated to adult social care, homelessness, SEN, and children's care. The big 4 areas that cost us a lot of money, but an additional £25 million. Moving on to capital. Pages 128 to pages 180 are new in this budget. You've never had them before. They're called a capital strategy. And in there is all the information that, with the greatest of respect, you keep badgering me about around the debt, okay? It's all in there for you to see. You've never had it before. It's the first time ever. We've set out a capital strategy. And in that capital strategy, it makes it perfectly clear that it is affordable. And it sets, for the first time ever, a provision of 12% of core resources to be spent on debt financing. And this is judged to be affordable by the Section 151 officer. So I keep saying this stuff over and over again, but it would appear that nobody wants to actually hear it. And I think that's a matter of choice, because the information is there for you all. And I've offered over and over again the opportunity to sit down with myself and officers and explain this to you, because it's good debt, it's good borrowing we're doing. Some of this debt is at 1.5% to 2% over 50 years. If somebody offered me that now, I'd bite their arm off. It's absolutely brilliant. So we've got a budget before us today, and I very much hope that you do support it. It is, in fact, the beginning of the process. And people often ask me, is this budget safe? Well, you might not wish to take my words for it, but contained within the report are the words of the Section 151 officer, and I shall read them to you. The Section 151 officer has included a chapter and verse in his test and has concluded that, taking into account the risk and mitigation set out in this report, the Section 151 officer is able to recommend this budget to full council for approval. So yes, it is safe. And finally, I'd like to pass on my considerable thanks to all members and officers for their considerable hard work in the preparation of this budget. This has been probably the hardest budget that I've been involved in setting, but I'd like to assure you it's probably the best. So therefore, we should all get behind it and deliver the great things set out in it. Thank you.
Councillor Evans, would you like to sum up?
Yes, I would, Lord Mayor. Thank you very much. I mean, what a lovely debate. Positivity on our side, and over there, a dystopian nightmare that's been created here. I mean, what I've learned today is if you vote independent on May the 7th, it's a vote to have children not cared for in living homes, but locked up in disused office blocks. That's a terrible proposition. It's also, if you're a low-paid worker, particularly in the public sector, you also need to know that if you vote independent, you're actually going to have your living wage reduced. Yet at the same time, they complain that nobody's got any money to go into pubs. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? It's because wages have been held down in this city for far too long. And one of the great things about this expansion project in the dockyard is that we are going to get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of better paid workers who are going to have the disposable cash to reflate our tired nighttime economy. And we're going to have thousands of people living in the city centre again who are going to deliver shop activity like we haven't seen in decades. It's going to be amazing. Get behind it. Get behind it. Have the joy. The joy, Councillor Ney. The joy. You know, you used to be fun when you were sitting on these benches. I don't know what happened to you, but I mean, you used to be fun.
Point of order, Lord Mayor.
No.
Point of order. It's personal attack.
Yeah. Yep, I got another one coming.
It's not a point of order.
First of all, to the Lib Dems, who, if you'll recall, Ed Davey, you got a cheek bringing that up. Ed Davey enabled austerity. It was him forming the coalition government that led to austerity, to the 14 years of misery in public sector, in that 60 pence in the pound that Councillor Smith mentioned. That was enabled by Ed Davey. I would worry about going back to 1982, but what really worries me on those benches, particularly Councillor Finn, actually Councillor Wood as well, and all of the independents, is thank the Lord they weren't here in 1941 when this council came together cross-party to decide to rebuild the city. Nobody in those minutes of those meetings said, well, we better worry about not doing that, because it might leave a legacy of debt for future generations. They just got on with it. They built 3,800 houses in 5 years. They rebuilt the city centre. And these things we do because they wouldn't happen if we just left it to the private sector. I mean, it's interesting, Councillor Finn brought up the private sector and the dockyard. It was agency management in the dockyard in 1985 that led to 26,000 redundancies over 2 years and a knock-on effect, which took us 20 years to get Plymouth unemployment back to the national average. That's the legacy of Councillor Finn's approach, the Conservative approach. So if you vote Conservative on May the 7th, that's what you're voting for. The past, not the future. But let me talk a minute about passion, because I resent entirely Councillor Nicholson, who doesn't live in the city, by the way. He's a parish councillor next door. He lives outside the city, yet he tells us that we're not passionate enough, but he's not passionate enough about the city to live in the city, to pay council tax in the city that he seeks to represent. And I'll tell you this about passion. I have never put on my leaflet my mother's address so that people on my election leaflets think I live in Plimpton when I don't. How passionate is that? And I would say,
on a point of order,
no, it's not a point of order.
On a point of order,
he hasn't got
in accordance with declarations of interest, I'm an owner of the property, and that's the reason I use it on literature. So it's misleading to suggest that it isn't my house.
Well, he doesn't live there, so, you know, that's the point I made. That's the point I was making. He doesn't live there. He's not passionate about Plymouth because he doesn't live here. He moved to Cornwall, then he moved to the South Hams. He didn't move back to Plymouth when he had the chance. So, Lord Mayor, this is a budget to make Plymouth healthy, wealthy, safe and wise, as my colleagues have been saying. And as my colleagues have been saying, it's a budget for stakeholders in the future, the children of tomorrow, the grandchildren of tomorrow. That's what we're doing. We're getting back to first principles. And I've got to say, on this business about Councillor Nicholson offering lectures on council tax, let me remind him once again, and I have to do this every year, he and his Conservative colleagues were responsible for the 2 highest percentage rises in council tax history. 12.5% in 2001-2 and 14%. That's 26.5% rise in council tax that he was instrumental in delivering. So please, we'll have no lessons from the Conservatives or the independents pretending to be independents who were Conservatives. It's only because Reform won't have them. That we will not have any more lectures from then. Thank you very much.
That's not very respectful, Lord Mayor, by suggesting that we're not going to join Reform. We choose to be independent, and I think what he said is wrong, and you should pull him up on it.
Thank you, Leader. We'll now move to the vote. Please vote using the buttons on your unit. The motion is carried. That concludes the business of the City Council. Thank you, members, for your time and engagement. I wish you all and those watching a good afternoon and hope you all stay safe and well. Thank you.